All right, series episode. We are actually having a World Series MVP on. Um, More importantly, he was a Oakland A and a New York Yankee, but he was also a Linfield alum. Thank you for coming on, Scott Brosius.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we just want to know what are you up to now? What is the baseball world for you now?
Yeah, right now baseball for me is pretty quiet. Kind of this world that we've been in here for a while, kind of the new norm with the COVID, really kind of essentially ended a lot of my work. I've been, last couple of years I've been with USA Baseball and working with the national teams. Of course, with the COVID, that kind of shut down. The summer, a lot of the developmental teams were completely shut down, and along with the professional teams, I was slated to be the manager of the qualifying and then hopefully the Olympic team. There were no Olympics this year, so it's really kind of ended a lot of the work that I was supposed to do this year. So been pretty quiet on my front.
So we talked going from Linfield to pro baseball.
So Ben, I lost you there a little bit. I only caught about two or three words, breaking up just a little bit. Hopefully it's not my Wi-Fi out here. Uh-oh.
So Ben asked, oh, you wanna?
All right. I just asked, what was it like going from Linfield to pro ball?
Yeah, I think there was definitely I think there every level that you move up to there's a step, that's from high school to college. It definitely feels different. You don't quite know till you get there what what it's going to look like, what the adjustments are going to be. I think probably the biggest thing going from Linfield into professional baseball was just seeing, day in and day out, kind of maybe the quality of the pitching, the players, obviously the depth of the guys on the team, competition day in and day out. But I also tried to make a point of not paying too much attention, for example, to, like, especially my first year, like where guys were from. I didn't want that to kind of play into the head games, So I didn't want to know if a guy was from UCLA or if he was where he was from or anything like that. I just wanted to go out there and just kind of okay, this is a pitcher, and I just need to go and try to hit. So I think one of the things, trying to get over the hump coming from a small school to, professional baseball was I had one game in particular where I accidentally kind of saw where this pitcher was from. He's from a major Pac-10 school at the time. I'm like, okay, wow, so-and-so is. And then I go out there and face him after the first pitch. I was almost like mad. I'm like, seriously, this guy got money to play baseball at college and this and that. And so it kind of showed me that, no, I can hit and I can play against anybody out
Um, in your playing career, you went from one of the more dynamic duos and the Bash Bros as teammates to the Core Four. What were the differences between that Oakland A's team and that New York Yankees team?
Yeah, obviously I came up with the A's kind of right in kind of the height of their time. I signed in 87, so I was in the minor leagues still when they were, 88, 89, and 90 when they had gone to the World Series 3 years in a row. But I caught it kind of the tail end as I came up in 91. We were a playoff team that year, but didn't go very far into the playoffs. And then kind of some of the changes started to happen. So I came up with a team just loaded with veterans, tons of talent, obviously, on the pitching staff, offensively, defensively, very, very solid team. And then kind of transition into kind of the rebuild in Oakland there. So we had some lean years there, not going to the playoffs, losing a lot of games. And then, so I was the young guy on a veteran team. And then as I got traded to the Yankees, became a little bit more of the veteran guy on a veteran team as well. That was very similar. The team in New York was, again, pretty loaded, with some veterans, but probably the biggest difference is they had the younger kind of the core that you're talking about. Some of the younger guys, Derek Jeter was just, like a third year player. at the time that I got traded, and Posada was young. Bernie had been there, but was still, just started getting into the thick of his career. So lots of veterans around, some really young, great players.
And there was a lot of good personalities on that Yankees team. Do you have any good clubhouse stories from those Yankees in the 90s?
Yeah, the one thing I would say about the Yankees, and one of the big differences between the Yankees and the A's, and it's a little unfair to say this. I mean, the A's went to 3 World Series, but the biggest thing that I noticed coming from Oakland over to New York was just how cohesive and just what great teammates the guys in that clubhouse were. In Oakland, as a young guy, you had these older players, and they were kind of hard on the young guys. You were sort of kind of just pushed into a corner a little bit and said, kind of shut up and just go do your job. And in New York, it was very different. I mean, there were no like cliques or groups. I mean, you would go to dinner. There'd be 8 guys going to dinner, after a game, but it might be a combination of 8 different guys every night. So very cohesive group, very focused on winning. My first day in spring training was so cool, sitting around guys and trying to get to know them. You play against them, but you don't know them. But being around these guys for the first time, and when I came over in 98 and 97, the team had got bumped out of the playoffs. They'd won at 96, 97. They'd got bumped out of the playoffs in the first round. And so the only thing guys talked about from day one in the clubhouse was, we're getting back to that World Series. We're going to get back to that World Series, and we're going to win the World Series. So it had nothing to do with individual kind of these are my goals, or these are the numbers I want to put up. It was all about winning and all about just getting back to the series. So very different personality types. You had David Wells, who would play just hardcore rock music before his starts, and then you had Bernie Williams, who would sit in the corner and strum his guitar and be asleep 20 minutes before a game, just very easygoing. So a whole bunch of different personality types, but everybody got along great.
Is there any similarities between the current Yankees team and the Yankee team that you were on?
I think there's definitely similarities in thinking. In New York, if you don't win, and if you don't win the whole thing, it's seen a little bit as, that season was a failure. So that was something that we had to live up to. It's changed a little bit with, Mr. Steinbrenner being gone and other people kind of running it. But, he was very, very straightforward, about his expectations. We're gonna pay you well, and we expect you to play well. And anything but the World Series was seen as kind of a losing season almost. And so some of those expectations are still there in New York. Just getting to the playoffs is not good enough. You're expected to stay there a long time and win some games and get to the series. So the teams itself, the makeup is a little bit different. You look at the teams now, and I see a team that has a lot of talent, but it's kind of a little bit more one-dimensional offensively. Very power-based. I think that the thing about our teams and kind of our runs is we had guys in the lineup 1 through 9 that we could play different styles of baseball if we needed to. We didn't have to rely on power. I mean, we won 114 regular season games in 98, and our home run leader had 29 that year. So, but we had like 6 guys or 7 guys who hit like 20, but we could hit and run, and we could bunt, and we could do other things. So we could play some small ball and win games that way. And then, of course, we just had a very deep starting staff and a great bullpen as well.
So you talked about coming up with the Oakland A's. Tell us about your big league debut. And I also understand that you homered in your debut. Is this true?
Yeah, so my big league debut, I got called up in my first 3 days in the big leagues. I didn't play at all. So I got called up, but I wasn't in the lineup. And I got called up on a Sunday. So I was there for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, didn't play. And then Wednesday in Oakland, they have these 12-15 day games on Wednesdays. Back then they were 12-15. So got to the ballpark, and I wasn't in the lineup again. We had optional batting practice. And so, of course, I took batting practice. And then about 11:30, that's about 45 minutes before the game, Tony La Russa, the manager, calls me into the office, and he was like, "Hey, bro, listen, we got a problem. We got nobody to play right field today." So, at Linfield, I'd played a little bit of center field and played some third base. So I had some experience in the outfield, but I didn't play any outfield in the minor leagues coming up at all. And so he was like, hey, can you play right field? And I'm like, well, what am I going to say? No, I'll just wait for third base to open up. I was like, yeah, oh yeah, I played a lot of outfield. I'm just lying through my teeth, right? Yeah, I played a ton of outfield. I can play field. I literally found out maybe a half hour before the game that I was playing. And so I had to borrow a glove to actually play the outfield. I didn't even have an outfielder's glove. And in Oakland, right field is kind of the sun field. So I'm sitting out there and I'm just like, what did I get myself into? I got the sun in my eyes and all this. And so it was probably the best thing for me offensively, because I wasn't even thinking about hitting. I was just like, don't look stupid out here, catch the fly balls, just get through playing the outfield. So offensively, I was just kind of relaxed because I was more just uncomfortable in right field. So my first at bat, I got a hanging 1-2 curveball that I hit for a double. And so that sort of took take that deep breath. You're at second base. You got the first hit. And then my second at bat, I hit a changeup for a home run. So yeah, started my career 2 for 2 with a double and a homer, and then punched out my final 2 times to end up 2 for 4 for the day. But a pretty fun first game.
That's awesome. So you've spent time as a head coach and a manager at some levels, and what was Tony La Russa's and Joe Torre's influence on your coaching style?
Yeah, no, great question, because I think everybody that you play for, everybody you're around has a kind of an influence, and both, Hall of Fame coaches, but very different approaches to how they manage a team and things like that. And Tony was kind of the guy that wanted, he felt like if I could put constant pressure, especially on the young guys, put constant pressure on them, then they would kind of get used to the pressure, right? And so when those moments came up, they were ready to handle it. Where Joe was just kind of the opposite. He was like, I want you to relax. I want you to go play. Just have confidence in what you do. So that way, when those moments come up, you're yourself. And so for me, I think I took some things from Tony. Tony was very prepared. I mean, off the charts, he was ahead of his time in terms of matchups and knowing kind of what he wanted to have during the game. So for me, kind of that preparedness is something that I always, really respected with what he did. But I think I took a little bit more from Joe. Like, I want the players to be themselves. Baseball should be fun. Yes, we're competing. We want to win. But you got to have fun doing this, and you got to be yourself. So I wanted my players to be a little bit more relaxed, so they could just trust who they were.
So this is a little bit of a 2-part question, but we all had that guy growing up who was the poster on our wall. Who was that guy for you? For me, my guy was Derek Jeter growing up, and I was wondering what your best Derek Jeter story was.
Okay, yeah. So my guy was Dale Murphy. So no question. I was in college. He was the stickball poster was on my wall, and so Dale was, a great player. Obviously, played for the Braves, in the 80s, 90s, and from Portland. So growing up in my area, he was a guy that I really looked up to, and more importantly, I just heard all the stories about what a good person he was off the field as well, how well he treated people, things like that. So no question. I mean, I have a Dale Murphy signed jersey in my closet right now. He's still my guy. When I get a chance to visit with him, I'm still kind of like that little kid talking to him. So he was my guy. In terms of Derek, I think the one thing that stands out for me with Derek was, like I said, when I came over in '98, he was still a younger player. He was a third-year guy, but he always carried himself like he was older. He carried himself, as a leader, and so he had the ability of very fierce competitor, but had the ability just to kind of enjoy and have fun along the way. So I get traded over. First home series of the year, we're playing the Mariners. And 2 outs in the first inning, Griffey's at the plate, and he hits a pop-up that I have to go over towards the stands, just a pretty basic pop-up, but I go over and I clank it, drop it, just a flat-out error. So I got I got people in the stands, go back to Oakland. Who are you? They're yelling at me and stuff like that. So for literally for like the next month, Jeter is calling me off every single pop-up, like things that I'm standing under. He walks over and he calls me off, and I look over. I'm like, dude, are you ever going to let me catch a pop-up? And he just grin and just walk back over to his position, right? So we're a month into this, and he and I are locker partners. You know, we're right next to each other, so we get along great. And so it wasn't like this, like I don't trust you. He was just like playing with me, literally just like playing with me on the field. So finally, we get like a month into it, and we get this pop-up, and it's like probably one of those that maybe the shortstop should take. I'm going back, into left field, and I'm yelling for it because I'm trying to catch a pop-up, and I'm like, he's not calling me off. I'm like, no way, he's going to let me catch this. But I can feel him close, but he's not calling me off. So right as I'm catching the ball, he goes, he's trying to scare me. And so I catch the ball and I look at him like, dude, are you serious? Like, what are you doing? And he just, same thing. I flipped the ball and he just grinned and turned away. And so then after that, he let me catch stuff. But that was kind of who he was. I mean, he just, like I said, was fierce, would do anything to win, but just, you have to enjoy yourself out there and kind of have some fun with it. So that always stood out to me because that was kind of one of my first little tastes of, people ask us, what do you guys do before the games? Of course, Jeter, he's got like deals with everybody. So all of a sudden this box arrives in the clubhouse and it's all these games because he's now a spokesman for, I don't know, whoever, Hasbro or whoever they are. So for like the next month before every game, we're having like the best 2 out of 3 Connect 4 competition. So here it is at 6:30, the game's at 7 o'clock. We're like, let's go, bring it out. And it's Connect 4 before we head onto the field. So, awesome leader, and just like I said, great guy around the clubhouse.
It wouldn't be the perfect World Series guest if we didn't ask about the World Series. You were part of a three-peat, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you were the MVP of the 1998 one.
Correct.
Can we hear about those World Series runs, and specifically that 1998 season?
Yeah, the 98 season was obviously really special. I mean, every World Series obviously was beyond cool and special, but I think there's something about the first one, doing it for the first time. And because it's like after the World Series, I remember a reporter asking me, like, did you ever dream about this? And I said, did I ever dream about this? Every single day. I mean, that's exactly what we dreamed about as a kid. I mean, that's what I did in the backyard was, it's the World Series and you're trying to, hit the tennis ball or the wiffle ball, over the fence or whatever. So, I mean, it was literally like a dream come true, and being traded to, the Yankees after the 97 season was the 97 season in Oakland was probably by far the worst season that I had. I didn't play well. I was injured. I had a knee surgery. I tried to rush back from it to try to keep my season going. And it just was one of those things where everything that could go wrong went wrong. And so to get kind of this fresh start and go to New York, it was just like, no way. I mean, I just left the last place team and now we're going to the playoffs and into the World Series, And so when I came over, Willie Randolph was our third base coach, and he was the guy that worked with infielders. So he hit me my ground balls every day. And so every single day, the last ground ball from spring training on, I would tell him 2 outs in the World Series, let's go, game ender, and he'd hit me some kind of ball or whatever. And it was like every single day, 2 outs in the World Series. So that was kind of one of the coolest things about that first series in 98 is the last ball did come to me. And so it was kind of that thing that I did every single day kind of like came true. And I was able to make the last out in the World Series. Pretty cool.
Okay, so our final question we ask all of our guests is, for us, we've grown up with some very iconic batting stances like Ken Griffey Jr., Albert Pujols, Derek Jeter. Who was the wiffle ball stance player that you emulated when you were playing wiffle ball?
Oh man, that's a good question because we didn't get, I'm going to age myself a little bit, but like when I was in, junior high and high school, we were just starting to get cable, right? We were just starting to get like the Cubs and the Braves on TV. And outside of that, you didn't get to see a ton of guys, but the easy guys, that we would do would be like Pete Rose, because he was all crouched down. He was a switch hitter, so he'd hit both ways, all crouched down, and he just passed away. But Joe Morgan was another guy, because when he hit, he had this little twitch with his elbow, and so we do those kind of things, So some of the Reds were the guys, Johnny Bench, those were the guys that I knew the best, because they were the guys on TV, the Big Red Machine, back when I was a kid. They were on the Saturday morning games, and so those were probably the guys more than anybody else that we tried to emulate.
So if those were the first games that you Red Sox World Series back in the day, and
Oh yeah,
was that the most exciting baseball that you've ever watched to this day?
it was pretty amazing, and like you said, and I'm in Oregon, and so I don't even have, like, I'm not even emotionally tied probably like the Red Sox and all those guys were, to the series. But yeah, pretty fabulous as a kid. I mean, like I said, those were the games, that series, like the Yankees when Reggie Jackson, hit 3 consecutive home runs. Those are the things, like as a kid, like as a grade school, I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I mean, that is, what I want to do when I grow up. And so, we only got to see 1 game a week as a kid, and then the playoffs, you got to see the playoffs. And so it was literally the biggest deal of the year. So yeah, my eyes were glued to every single game.
So comparing that Carlton Fisk home run to anything you've seen in recent years, what would you compare it to?
Good question. I think, there, I don't know. I know there's been a couple walk-offs in the last few years in the playoffs, and probably the one that comes to mind is Joe Carter.
Yeah.
Joe Carter goes down the line, almost kind of not really the same type of home run, but a pull home run. And I mean, to literally be able to hit a home run to end the World Series. Now, Carlton Fisk kept them alive, right? But that didn't end the World Series. But Joe Carter hit a home run to win them the World Series. And so, and watching him as a veteran dance and jump around, going around the bases, it just shows how important and how much it matters to these guys to do something like
All right, last thing. Who do you got winning the World Series this year?
So I'm going to sound like a front runner, but I literally said this last week. As soon as I felt whoever between the Rays and the Yankees, whoever won that series was going to win the whole thing. And so as soon as Tampa beat New York, I said, okay, these guys are going to get it done. So I'm going to stick with my Tampa Guns, and I know they're up 3-1, so that's an easy thing to say right now. But yeah, when it all started, I felt like the winner of that series was probably going to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I think both me and Ben have the Dodgers, and I think we all actually have the Dodgers now I think about it.
Yeah,
so.
I was driving over yesterday. I'm over in Central Oregon right now, and I was driving, listening to that game on my radio, and it didn't take. I didn't even get from McMinnville to Salem, and I'm like, okay, this game's over. I mean, it was, and the poor Braves to kind of have that happen 2 years in a row a little bit. And at least this one wasn't an elimination game, but when you give up like 10 and 11 or whatever in a playoff game, that's a tough history right there. So yeah, I think the Dodgers might be waking up.
So this is a question that's been all over Twitter. As a Yankee, I'm sure you got your pinstripes when you won that MVP for them in the World Series. Everyone wants to say that Giancarlo Stanton has not received his pinstripes from Yankee fans. How do you feel about that, and do you think he has?
Well, I think, I mean, that's going back to what I said earlier. There's no question that's how players are judged, and it's fairly or unfairly in New York. It's judged by winning championships, and it hasn't happened yet. I know he hasn't been on the field all the time. There's been some injury issues. Some of those things are out of his control. But yeah, I mean, this whole group, whether it's Stanton, even Judge, all these guys. I mean, that's just how any big trade or any big free agent, his value to the franchise in New York is always based on championships. And so that's how CC, earned his stripes when he came over, and that's just how it is out there. So like I said, may not be fair, but I guarantee that's the perception right now.
We understand that for sure. So thank you for coming on. This has been an amazing time. We hope to have you on again sometime. So
No, great talking to you guys. So yeah, anytime, let's do it again.
for sure.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Okay, guys. See you later.
See ya.